I wonder, look on Twitter to see if it's been live for a little bit, Cole, real quick. Because somebody commented and I didn't even think we were on. Can you see how long it's been live for? Yo. Are you going to start it up? Yeah, go ahead. All right, so it just went. I don't know where that dude's comment came from. That's kind of crazy. So it just went live 30 seconds ago. All right. Interesting. How about on Facebook? So, yeah, because whoever commented first, it was from 12:04. So that was just a couple minutes ago. Maybe look at YouTube too, real quick. All right, training talk. I'm your boy Corey G. This is Coach Myers. We're going to talk about back training today. I think that everybody wants to bench. Everybody wants to do curls. A lot of people neglect their back, but I would say that this is something Dustin did early very well, and I caught up to him on it because I wasn't really fucking with it enough.
Caught up. I'm going to say passed up.
Nah, I don't know about that. But there's, back in the day when we used to train together early, 16, 17 years old. We was in Dustin's garage and I wanted to bench like every fucking day. And Dustin was like, no, let's do back. And I was like, oh, okay. Cause I didn't have any seated row machine. I didn't have any pull down. I didn't have any of that stuff at my place and of my grandpa's place. So I was like, okay, sure. And that's like, I'll follow you. And then what happened, D?
So now the way I remember it is I had said, all right, well, we're going to start with pull-ups. And I don't think at that time you had done pull-ups before.
No.
So you had made it, to
not like as a workout.
Not as a workout. Maybe like just doing it like in someone's doorway or something,
Or like maybe in gym class.
Yeah. And at that point I had been doing pull-ups, for a while. I'd already been lifting weights, 3-4 years or whatever. And I do remember when I first started out doing pull-ups, I could only do one. So my dad would have me do 10 sets of one.
Yeah.
And then I got to
That's where it starts.
Yeah, I got to 2. And then he said, okay, well, now you only have to do 5 sets. So I kind of like the idea of doing less sets and doing more reps. And I think within, maybe a month or 2, I was able to do 10. And then I think within maybe a year and a half after that, I could rep out 30. Now, I'm not saying they were like full lockout, perfect reps, but I was pretty good at them. So
yeah, you had freaking lats, which is also why you were able to load, I think, your bench really well because you had good mind muscle connection pretty young with your lat training.
Yeah, I think maybe that's something a lot of, especially younger kids, don't understand is like, all right, if you want to have a big bench, it's not just about your chest and triceps.
No.
You got to have strong lats and understand how to use them when you're pressing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So Dustin jumps up on the bar and hits like, I don't remember how many he did that day, but it was definitely like 20-ish.
We'll call it 30.
Yeah, we'll say he did 30 and I could do literally like 1. And I was like surprised because I was thinking like, well, I had probably since the last time I had tried pull-ups, I'm big. I was bigger than at that point. So like, bigger for me at that point is probably like 150 some pounds, but I hadn't tried to do, what I thought was going to be 20 pull-ups and it became 1. And that was super humbling. Then I started to realize, all right. And I really think from that day on, I started taking back training way more serious. What was great was I had never really been to a traditional gym. The really first traditional gym was in your garage and your dad had the old mill setups. Explain what you guys had in the garage. It's fucking sick.
Man, I'll tell you what, I would give anything to still have this
Where's it at?
system. So, well, let me explain.
Tell what it is first.
I'll explain what it is first. And
I'm here asking questions.
So this would have been probably like in the late 70s, early 80s, whenever my dad started putting his garage gym together, the original Kim's gym. Mm-hmm. He had a guy from the mill that welded him essentially like almost like a universal rack. So it was like a squat rack. It had a bench, and then there was a pulley system on the back that you could sit down, or you could kind of extend the pulley, and you could do seated rows. Now, when I say homemade, like this was like industrial pipe and like the angle iron that came off to hold like the squat rack and the bench. It had like nuts and bolts welded to the top of it. That's what would stop the bar from rolling off of it. So that was our original rack. And then, the pipe that went along the top that kind of housed the pulley system, that's what we would use for our pull-ups. So already like grip strength was in play because you couldn't use your thumbs. It was too thick to hold on to. So yeah, that was the original thing that we would work out on. And I think what happened was whenever, because my parents split up, and then eventually once my dad ended up moving his gym somewhere else, he had that contraption in the back of someone's truck, and they were pulling it under this pavilion. You remember that the original house he bought up in Empire?
Yeah.
He had his weights under a pavilion. So he went from an unheated garage to an outdoor pavilion,
Mhm.
and he would lift out there even in the wintertime. But anyway, they were pulling under the pavilion, and there wasn't enough clearance. And it hit the top, and because it was like strapped into the truck, it actually bent the thing.
Oh.
So and then that was it. So then he just kind of
end of it.
Yeah, he scrapped it after that. That was it.
Yeah, the crazy thing is like that pulley system for pull downs and rows was so epic. And I remember feeling the growth on my back, and then seeing our bench continue to climb because our back got so much stronger. And then later, at age 21, when I did my first bodybuilding show, I realized like, man, these motherfuckers are winning these shows when they turn around.
Right.
Everyone got abs, right? And I didn't have the hamstrings to match at that point either. But I was like, all right, the show is won. Everybody seems to look good from the front. When you turn around, if your shit is nasty, I remember when I had my second or third ONBF show I hosted, some dude came out of nowhere from Akron and his back was just nasty. And I just remember thinking, damn, that's what I need to be looking like out here.
Oh, for sure, man. Like in the natural bodybuilding world, that's a separator, like the low back, glutes, and hamstrings.
Yep.
If your glutes are shredded, if your hamstrings
Such
are
a
in,
small percentage.
oh, it's so small because like you said, everyone looks good from the front. Everybody got quads, everyone got abs, everyone got big arms, but it's definitely a separator.
You got the Christmas tree and glutes, it's next level. That's a fact.
Lights out right there.
Yeah, no, it is. The other thing I think and it's weird because my early training was all based around what my grandfather taught me or what I had read from Arnold. And I think that for some reason I wasn't, and maybe it's because we didn't have the equipment. I was trying to think back, but I really didn't superset like those guys did. That's what they all did.
Right.
They superset chest and back 3 times a week with that crazy volume. And then I realized like, all right, one, I'm taking something different than they're taking. So I can't recover from that type of training.
Right.
But twice a week, chest and backs, push and pull together is still my favorite way to train it. No matter how many powerlifting things I've done, no matter how many different programs I've wrote or done, I still have like a liking to what that feels like.
Well, I think the pump you get from a chest and back workout is really like nothing else.
Yeah.
Number one. And number two, like because those muscle groups are antagonistic, they really help each other more than you think in all the movements.
Sure.
So it's not just when you're bench and you're using your lats, but I did a rope climb workout today. I had a chest pump after it.
Yeah.
You don't think of using your chest when you climb a rope, but you do.
Mm-hmm.
So really just
dropping that CSCS knowledge out here, Paco.
Antagonistic. I had to look that up on my way here. I Googled it for you.
But I've talked about this before. Like, I got this old Arnold magazine. I think it's from '93, and it was a muscle mag that had all of his chest and back workouts in it. And that was where original some of the Get Stacked and old Get Swole training had come from. And then the blueprint, when I worked with him on that, changing it up. And it was like, no matter how bad a day I got, shit's hitting the fan, I'm fucking maybe bored with my workouts, I'll pull that bitch out and do an old school chest and back workout that has 5 different supersets. And that fucking superset old school workout is what I remember where I really grew the early parts of the muscle that y'all see now with grimy workouts like that 2 and 3 times a week, just really believing that I could build a physique. It was really based around some of that real early stuff like that, which it's evolved now in my programming and your programming, but that's really what lights me up and what I return back to when I'm like, man, I just don't want to think. I just want to train. That's what I go to.
You can just kind of go on autopilot and do it for the enjoyment of it.
You got it.
And could you ever imagine at that time when you were looking at that Arnold mag back in the day, like, hey, someday I'm going to kind of make some newer variations of these same workouts with Arnold?
You know what? When that hit me the most was when we were working. So when I sat in Arnold's office for like 3 days and went through all the pumping iron footage for the marketing stuff for MP. And I remember pulling like, all right, this clip's never been seen. This clip's never been seen. This clip's never been seen. And then I came back to Ohio and then we rewrote the voiceover for it. Mm-hmm. And so then when Arnold was like articulating the new voiceover with some of the changes that we had written, and then it was over footage that some had been seen, some hadn't been seen, but it provoked like a different feeling. I was like, fuck, like that's the shit I never think that you could evoke like it's footage that we've all grew up looking at.
Right.
And then there was shit that I know no motherfucker seen. And then I had a part to do with like what he was saying over it. Man, what? That's when shit was like, this is fucking wild. And when we were doing the blueprint workout together, and I messaged him about, hey, can you, approve this or this? I changed this superset. And he was like, he's like, well, I'm on a flight to Europe. I'll look over it on there and get back to you. I'm like, all right, man, this is like a whole nother fucking level. So no, that right there. And even to this day, D, like last year, they probably won't have it this year with the Christmas party, but last year I went in a day early, and, Arnold and I are doing donkey calf raises or fucking shoulders together. And like, he's mostly does machines now, but like I'm waiting for my set and Arnold's doing his set or vice versa. That shit will never get old, bro.
Yeah. It's one of those things you could never get used to. I don't see how you could.
Or even him walking in our gym that day.
Man,
that's fucking lights out, bro. That's why we get the big ass picture in there.
I've been around a lot of famous people, and I mean, I think in every other situation, I would just feel like, man, this guy is just like anyone else. They're like, no, but when Arnold walked in the gym, I felt like I was in a movie. His voice sounded like it was like booming, like echoing, like it was like a for real, like, I mean, I hate to call it like a fanboy moment, but it was like, this is like a larger than life moment for sure.
Well, and a larger than life person.
For sure. He's an icon.
He's an icon. And the fact that our lives had been so dramatically changed because of, his group of that era really set up the tone for the entire industry.
Well, and it's, I think, so ingrained, like you talk about the famous scenes from Pumping Iron that everyone's seen. It's so ingrained in the psyche of the bodybuilding community, in, weightlifters, especially from our era that kind of grew up watching that.
Yep.
So then for you to go over this unseen footage, it would probably almost feel like you discovered a box of home movies of your parents when they were young. Like it had that same feeling of like, you're seeing this history that's a part of you.
Bro, I was like, I already know what to do with this. When can I get in? And I think that was where a lot of the confidence was with us working together, is because I knew he knew that I almost felt like we studied that stuff so much, D. I almost felt like we was part of it, even though we wasn't.
Right.
Because you got to figure, guys, we didn't have no internet. So it's what Dustin's dad taught us, my grandfather taught us, and what we read in Arnold magazines. And I had Randy had given me, and I still have him at the crib, and Franco Colombo, RIP, had just died this year. Like he said, he didn't even really have like a quality version of him still, but I got the pamphlet series from Franco Colombo from 1973. And it's like nutrition from Sardinia, chest training, back training. Like that's how that was their ebooks back in the day.
Right.
And so like, really looking through that kind of stuff, that's how we learned how to train. So it's so ingrained in us. Yeah, it's definitely like pretty wild. But the one thing I loved about was being able to ask Arnold specific things about back training, because you see those old videos of him like stretching and squeezing in the T-bar rows. And, by conventional standards, maybe his form wasn't great. But he was like, look, our lower backs were so strong. We were trying to stretch that lat to the fucking, nth degree and try to, and I've always taught everybody I've trained with, like big ass fucking shelf, big ass arch. Like that's all he talked about, that mind muscle connection with his back. And I really believe that's what allowed me over time to get the amount of back shit I got going on, is because I think from that first day where I could do one pull up, I really locked into that squeeze, that stretch. And that was like overplaying in my head with, looking into Arnold's stuff, but then actually hearing him say it that way too. It was good.
I just realized I don't think my mic's on.
Go ahead. Let me say it's right here, buddy.
Okay.
You're good. You're looking at the wrong.
I looked at the wrong one. I was like, man, it's my mic off this whole time.
You're good.
No, I think you brought up a good point, is that, obviously because their lower backs were so strong, and someone might look at some of the stuff that they did and the way they did things and say, well, they're out of position or their form's not perfect. But because they had such control and such a good mind-muscle connection, they weren't really in danger of getting hurt, even when they were lifting with great intensity, because they were really concentrating on how they were moving the weight.
Yeah. Where they were getting the stretch from. You got to figure Arnold was a 700-pound deadlifter. He didn't talk about his powerlifting stuff. He's a 700-pound deadlifter. So if he's got 4 plates on the T-bar, 5 plates on the T-bar, and he's all rounded up, and then he's got that big squeeze, he's not really in danger to get hurt. Where, like that's a fucking tough ass movement. Most people look at that and think, man, I would be that out of position. But for those guys, it wasn't that way. And here's the other thing is, when I went to Venice Golds for the first time, I knew that original pull-up bar was there.
Right.
And so there's these pictures of Arnold where his hands are all the way out. That motherfucker is so wide. I went out, and Arnold's got really long arms. I tried to do a pull-up with that exact same grip, just like I saw in the magazine all these years. I couldn't do it. It's like, it's wider than my shoulder joints. It's so fucking wide.
I think I tried one on there and it felt like I was going to rip my rotator cuff.
No, seriously.
I could not do it.
It's unbelievable. And then you start to realize, like, man, that's why these motherfuckers were so wide.
Right.
And then they had the V-bar welded to that fucking thing too, which I don't think it's there anymore, but to where they were doing the seated rows. And you would look at Franco, and this is something you and I did a bunch with our training too, is like, I would try to mimic a seated row in the air, trying to take that seated row bar to my like upper abs as I'm doing a pull up. And I think that helped a ton with my back training too.
Well, when you watch guys do, whether it's V-bar or even chin-ups, you see they use so much arm and they're really not pulling with their back. Like what you talk, you've always been big on those V-bar pull-ups where you kind of arch through.
Yeah.
And it's like you're bringing your upper abs and
doing a
chest
seated row in the middle of the air, basically.
Yeah. It's like a row. It's like a row version of a pull-up.
Yeah, man. I think that. And so the other thing is the volume that we've kept. I remember probably one of the best things I did early in my lat training was, and I remember later somebody's like, well, your back's probably smoked the rest of your workout. When we were in college, well, I was acting like I was in college, but when we were in college, we used to do 3 sets of failure wide grip pull-ups before we did anything. Remember that, D?
I was actually just going to bring that up.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So that's probably one of the biggest changes to my back training is that for years, I'm talking from the time I was probably 12 or 13 up until like my early 20s, my go-to when I started my back training, now it'd be different on a day if I was doing chest and back together, but if it was a back day, I would do 3 sets of wide grip pull-ups till failure. But then when I would go to my row movements and stuff after that, I mean, my lats were smoked.
Yeah.
So I think it really, even though that stuff helped me, definitely helped my lat development overall, it kind of hurt my progression on my back training. So now if I do pull-ups first, I do maybe a warm-up set or 2, but I go real heavy on weighted pull-ups and then go into my rowing movement. So I can still go very heavy on my one-arm rows, 125s, 145s. Yesterday I went up to like sets of 5 with 4 plates on the T-bar. But if I would have done volume on pull-ups first, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So if I keep volume pull-ups in on a back day, I do them at the end as a finisher or just on kind of a separate day as like a bodyweight training only day.
Yeah, there's definitely a lat pump that comes from that style though, where you're like taking maybe 2-minute rest and you're doing 30 back to 25 back to, you know what I mean? Like that's definitely, I think that's what progressed my pull-ups though, when we did that all the time. Cause I think I was able to make good progress, but like you said, our rowing motions like suffered for a period of time, which probably hurt our physique a little bit. For sure.
Yeah. I think, trying to remember back to like my early bodybuilding days, I think I had real good width, but I didn't have thickness in my upper back. My traps, my upper back. I mean, there was muscle there, but didn't have that dense look to it. And I think it was because by the time I would get to my rowing movements, maybe I'm using 80s, 100s. I mean, it felt heavy, but really I was capable more for sure.
And I noticed a huge change right after we opened the first studio. We were going down to World's Gym Livingston sometimes. Legendary. Like gym down in the hood. There was a bunch of really like old school bodybuilders there. And I remember their weight stack on seated rows went past 300. That was the first time I had ever seen that. And I remember seeing guys doing heavy 5s and 6s and 8s at the stack, 300, 320. And I was asking them, they're like, yo, if you're trying to bench 400 pounds, how can you expect your rows to be 200 pounds? Like, you know what I mean? And I started thinking about myself, well, fuck, I'm not pushing myself hard enough because Arnold's volume in that, I don't really remember the numbers they were using, but it wasn't really super wild. They were really looking for the pump. Then I was like, all right, now, and kind of like I just programmed in the most recent workout, I like to do some like heavy light type of stuff where, I think me and Cole were working up to like 270 for sets of 5 or 6, then dropping it down and doing like a drop set at like 130 for like 20. And then that pump's nasty.
Right.
But just even understanding that I can't have my back be that, especially my mid back, be that far behind what my pressing is. None of this resources were really out there these early times for us like they are now.
No, but yeah, you kind of had to like learn from whoever you were around. And I actually remember that exact conversation because after someone kind of told you that, like, hey, how are you ever going to bench 400 pounds if you're not even rowing 200?
Yeah.
We went to the World's Gym in Livingston because we didn't have a good seated row at T3 at the time.
Yep.
And I did a chest and back workout with you. And I remember you went first on the seated row. I tried to use whatever you were using and I about threw my lower back out. Like I couldn't do it. I remember thinking like, what the fuck? How am I weak on rows? But it's because I would just put 120 on and get a good squeeze. I was usually always smoked from doing the pull-ups first.
Yep.
But after this guy kind of dropped that knowledge on you, and then we did a chest and back workout there, I remember I was like, man, I guess my back is weak.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like getting him back for the fucking one pull up. No.
Well, I remember you went to 200 on the stack, and I thought like 200 on rows. Like I remember thinking that seemed like so much.
So,
but at the time we're benching like 350, but to me 200 seemed like a lot on rows, and that's really backwards if you think about it.
Well, super fucking backwards. And the reality now is, you know, with what I understand, that's why I do back on Mondays, not chest, to try to set the tone for shoulder health, which I had some issues last year. But the reality is like, that's been that, and all the upper back training has been major key for me staying in the game, even through like some serious injuries.
I'll tell you, one of the things I had really good success with my guys this summer, you know, Colin and those guys that came out and had a really good, you know, kind of a bench season, as we should call it, is we did a lot of like loading with bands, like kind of mimicking our press right before they would go to their heavy doubles.
That's cool.
So we would take the bamboo bar, hang it from some thick bands from the, you know, from like the cable crossover. They would lay under in the bench and set up the same way as if they're going to bench, and they would do some speed pulls and then go immediately to their pressing.
Ooh.
So it was like priming those lats to be able to throw that weight off you. So there's your gem for the day. You might throw some big weight this week.
Yeah. I need to try some of that, because so basically almost like a body weight row, but you were using bands and using the bamboo bar.
Using a band, so that way you can do your setup on the bench would be exactly the same.
Yeah.
And so that way you could kind of get your same grip. You know, because we'll use T-bar a lot with a lot of weight or whatever, and that still feels good. But this felt just a little bit different. It almost felt like it was like you're doing a slingshot in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I like it. Yeah, I've seen some of the West Side dudes that fuck with that stuff before. I've seen that before there. The talk about one arm rows, D. Like there's, you know, like when I went and trained with Mike O'Hearn, he never used the bench. He was like kind of like almost like a split leg one arm row. Do you like knee up? Do you like against something? Like some guys like to post up on the fucking on the dumbbell rack. Like what's your kind of like way that you like to do it?
Yeah, so it's one of those things. It's a very simple movement, but everyone kind of has their own way of doing it.
Yeah, they do for sure.
I like post up, either my hand on the bench, or I usually just go to the dumbbell rack.
Okay.
And I like my feet square, meaning, you know, guys do it in a split stance a lot, but what I've found is if you're pulling a heavy ass dumbbell and you're in a split stance, you are going to rotate away from the weight.
Okay.
Because your hips are going to naturally want to go that way.
Makes sense.
If your feet are square, you're going to be more apt to kind of stay in and grind through that rep.
Mm-hmm.
So I always coach my guys, keep their feet square. That way, plus two, it kind of keeps your hips in good position, a little less chance of, you know, kind of tweaking anything or overdoing it. So that's what I go with. I know some guys are probably big believers in having the knee on the bench. I've never really liked that. That's always felt kind of weird to me, the knee on the bench.
I would say I did the knee on the bench for a really long time. I like the split stance kind of out in space, but to your point, it's a really good way to tweak something if you're going super heavy, because your hips are kind of out of, and when you get old, sometimes you gotta look out for that stuff. But I've kind of went back and forth combo of that. I actually like chest supported fucking heavy ass dumbbell rows for sets of 5 and 6. I have my high school kids do that a lot, going overhand and underhand, winding them through. So it's like, but I think like a main heavy rowing motion. I know Arnold and them used to do like a lot of the barbell rowing kind of on the bench with the deep stretch. I just seemed like that shit always fucking hurt me in a bad way. Right. I don't know. Like I couldn't fuck with it. Like I've tried so many different times. I mean, I took a picture like that at fucking Gold's Gym just to recreate something, but I couldn't really get down with there's some of those guys that love just heavy ass bent over barbell rows, but for me, it just never really worked.
I think it looks and feels the most savage.
Yeah.
But I think it's the most dangerous. And I get the whole thinking of like, well, you don't want any weak links and this and that, but like you're really not doing bent over rows to train your lower back.
Yeah.
You know, so like if your lower back is going to be the limiting factor, you know, why not go to a chest supported row so you can really pull some heavy weight, not have to worry about your lower back.
Yeah, that's true. And then maybe, you know, actually focus on, let's talk about lower back, focus on lower back outside of that. What is probably like your go-to out of all the lower back movements that you feel like for you personally or your guys, that is like something that has to be done on a weekly basis?
Well, so the biggest thing for lower back health, number one, is, you know, train your glutes and hams.
Yeah, facts.
You know, so it's almost like the most important thing for lower back
isn't lower back.
Yeah, you know, so but
they're the main supporting structure. People don't. That's why when people start lunging with me, they come over and they're like, their fucking back hurts, they're out of shape, they start lunging, all of a sudden their fucking back pain goes away.
Right.
And it's because their glutes were so like out of touch and weak.
Oh yeah, there's times where if my back is acting up, I'll go do lunges on my driveway for 10 minutes and then it's better.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's unreal. So, but as far as like what people think of as traditional lower back exercise, I like just a regular hyperextension. You know, either real high. Yeah, I just do it off the glute ham.
Yeah, glute ham.
do it with the legs slightly bent, make sure I'm squeezing my glutes on each rep. And we either do them like super high rep, like sets to like 50, or we do them, kind of like how you showed me holding the plates down low. So that's kind of my go-to. I mean, I know the reverse hyper is great, and I use that with my guys too, but the reverse hyper actually bothers my low back.
It bothers mine too.
Yeah, just because of the way that I got those bulging discs. I know for some people it's like a godsend, but for me, I can't really mess with it.
I think because I had mostly in my life, not disc problems, but SI problems. For some reason, I can do reverse hypers without weight. The way it pulls me under, I feel like I'm crooked. So I could just never get that relief everyone else got. I tried it so many times when I went there, so many times at our gym, and I use it more for my hip stuff than I do for that. I think, yeah, you mentioned it. The weighted with the plate hanging, I think was when we saw the most dramatic change in our 4 a.m. crew strength. It was two things. It was front squats against band tension, rotating the 200, 300, and 400 pounds week to week. And it was the heavy ass fucking plates. And then Grayson, G-Lo down at fucking St. Clairsville. I forget how to say his last name. He hooked up and started doing those too. And he pulled fucking 700 pounds. And
kid is an absolute freak.
He's a freak. And one of his main things was he done ton of hamstring and band stuff, but he's always got as many plates as he can hold.
Like literally like 7-8 plates.
Yeah. And Matheny did the same thing when he pulled 640 and 650. The 650 looked like the bar was empty. And I remember him doing 6 and 7 plates on those. So the key to that is on the GHD is to make sure you lock your hips in. So where you're just hip hinging up, it's not like you're way hung out to dry. Right. So where your hips are actually supported and you're literally just almost at the end of that deadlift pulling through. Yeah, it fucking works good.
It's a real short movement. And even for someone like me that has a ton of back problems, I can do those regularly. I can do them heavy and it doesn't give me any problems whatsoever.
Yeah, if you're locked in right.
Right.
For sure. That makes sense. Anything other back training wise you can think of, D?
Yeah, so I think maybe one of the other things I've changed a lot in the last, however many years, and I actually started kind of doing this by accident, trying to work around, some of my athletes that had some injuries to like bicep tendon issues, is I've incorporated a lot of straight arm lat stuff, which I never really did before. So straight arm lat pull downs here, we do them with like a single arm. We even do them kind of bent over in a wrestling stance.
Oh yeah,
so really just working that lat adduction. There's another big word for it. But kind of taking the biceps out of the equation. So with wrestlers, because they're hand fighting so much, they're constantly pulling, they have a lot of wear and tear on the bicep tendon. So especially in season, Colin always used to have problems with it. Jake Ryan used to have problems with it. Hunter Stieber, all those guys, their bicep tendons would kill them and they couldn't do any rows or anything. So Bobby
V was actually having problems with that too.
What's that?
Bobby V came to me on that too. The same.
It's probably for wrestling, because so much they're gripping and pulling so much. So that's when I started using a lot of straight arm lat stuff with them because I'm like, man, I can't let these guys go 2 months in season and not do any work for their lats. So that's when we started using that, and we do a lot of real heavy weight on the single arm ones, bring it down, pause and hold, and it's we've seen a lot of good results with that for sure.
Yeah, I've always done a lot of stiff arm lat work in my warm up for benching too, because it would go from tricep all the way through my serratus, and I felt like it would warm me up real well to support the weight.
Now, you've always been a big dumbbell pullover guy.
Yeah.
Do you like them better on a chest day, back day, or you kind of look at it as both and it doesn't really matter?
Yeah, it's so crazy because I remember when we first started getting heavy into those in the early personal training gym days, the T3 days, I remember doing like sets of 20 with like 80-pound dumbbells and doing like 5 sets like that in between the supers, like doing heavy volume. And not only and I think this had a lot to contribute to me being able to come back from that shoulder injury because my serratus and stuff was so strong from all that shit, right? But I think that if you can get the stretch right, it's weird because it only feels the best on a chest and back day, which is the way the Arnold programmed it.
Because you need everything warm for it.
Correct. It doesn't feel great on a back day, doesn't feel great on a chest day. I really think that exercise feels the best when you combo those together. And making sure, like if you just literally Google search like, dumbbell pullover Arnold, you can see the 1970s pictures of him literally wrapping himself around the bench to get the ultimate stretch, which is why all his shit looks so nasty in there. And not only did I find a lot of value in my serratus anterior and my lats, but a lot of value in my upper abs.
Right.
Because I think a lot of people always like, how do I get my lower pec cut into and I think there's a lot of things that work that, but if you're arching properly, I think that's probably one of the best things that work it.
I mean, the key is having those hips lower than the bench, right?
The hips have to be lower than the bench. And as I've kind of come back from the shoulder thing, it's been harder for me to get my hips lower because my mobility wasn't as good because I was tight. And now that it's starting to open up again, it feels amazing. Yeah. So the dumbbell pullover is, and me and Arnold talked about this multiple. It's like a lost exercise because I think it's difficult. I think in a big gym, you're going across the bench, not this way on the bench, across the bench. You're all laid out. I think people are they feel fucking weird doing it, but it's a fucking one of the monsters of all back exercises.
Yeah, I still use it with all my guys. I mean, I think even looking at, wrestlers and kind of a sports specific, position, being able to pull down like this is very applicable.
I think problem is though, people have their elbows too flared out too, D. I think it gets them in trouble with their shoulders.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, that's the other thing is making sure your elbows are tight and you're getting that stretch, not you're opened up. And I think that's where just like fly movements, I think people have done it this way for so long, they can't really feel what it's supposed to hit. And they feel that it's going to hurt them. So they just backed off of it. You know,
the devil's in the details, right?
Yeah. And I don't know if you saw that with some of your probably athletes, like maybe that was more natural or not natural. You're coaching them the proper way, but that would be a risk to them if they did it the wrong way, obviously.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever really noticed that be a problem. I could see how people could easily kind of end up like this in that position, The other thing, though, is I guess when you bring those elbows in, guys are going to have a tendency to use almost too much tricep.
Yeah, true.
Rather than get that stretch that they need to get. So I've always used it. I love the exercise, but I think for me personally, it doesn't feel great. Like it's one of those exercises where I kind of feel fragile on it. You know what I mean? I still use it, though, because I like it. I like the way I feel from it. And it kind of hits like that serratus and upper ab area different really than anything else.
Yeah, I think and I'm getting close to back to this, but to be able to do a heavy set of 10 or 12 with a 100-pound dumbbell, get a full stretch and feel like confident, that when I've been at that area of training, that's probably felt the best to me for sure. And like you said, hips down, wrapped around. I think you get up and you feel wider. Like the pump is different, right?
Right. It feels like it's working every muscle in your upper body.
You feel yoked the fuck up, which is why Arnold had it as a finisher. It was always on the last superset with either flies or dips or something like that. That was there to kind of like finish off everything because you was already smoked.
Yeah, I actually love the superset it with dips.
Yeah, no,
I'll go from like a heavy set of 6 to 8 on that pullover and then go right to dips for like 50.
Yeah,
the pump is real.
Explain on your dips, D, because I know it's a different body part, but still like, head up, head down, chest up, chest down. Like, how do you?
Yeah. So my big thing is I try to keep, my elbows in. I go down only to about 90. I don't dip way down to where it's taxing the front of the shoulder. I make sure I'm getting a good lockout, make sure I'm hitting the triceps at the top. I kind of try to keep my glutes tight so that my legs don't swing too much. I think that's what a lot of people forget when they do body weight movements, whether it's pull-ups, whether it's dips, whatever. They forget about their core and their lower body. So their feet end up all over the place. You see guys doing pull-ups and their knees are up in front of them and stuff. So I always tell them, keep your glutes tight, keep your hips extended. So that way you're just really concentrating on using your upper body. Use your core and your lower body to stabilize and use your upper body to move it. So with the dips, same thing. Try to keep my glutes tight. Even if I got my legs bent, that way my knees are still underneath of me, not out in front of me. And the biggest thing is not letting those elbows flare out. And I guess my chest kind of comes forward a little bit, but I don't try to over accentuate that part of it.
Yeah, it's good. I'm just trying to think if there's anything back training related. Anything else you can think of? We hit fucking pretty much everything.
What's your favorite type of pull-ups?
I think, at the gym, at Old School, we've got that thicker bar that's on the rig. I like going all the way out too. So it would be as wide as you can go on that thick one. I get a better pump with that same grip, maybe because that's how we started.
Right.
Because I know it's funny is because the younger kids I train, they're used to grabbing a hold of the bar where we've always kind of cupped it like that.
Right.
And I felt like I can get a better lat. So when I felt the best on that D is I think I made 20 reps, 18, something with a 45 hanging with that wide grip.
That's legit.
And that's where I think I felt probably the best in my pull-up career. I would say that's probably I really enjoy the cedar row ones or the V-bar, but I think that wide grip with that thick bar, which I think a lot has to do with how we kind of learned it.
Yeah, no doubt.
How about you?
I used to love the wide grip ones. I can't do them anymore. It just kills my shoulder. So now like an overhand, like shoulder width, or maybe even a little closer than shoulder width, that still probably feels the best to me. And it's kind of strange. Like I can use, I think, more weight because we do a lot of weighted chin ups and pull ups now. Like underhand weighted chins, I can do more weight. But if I'm going for reps, that overhand medium grip, I can still crank them out.
Yeah. I think that being able to do 20, 30, or at will body weight exercises like a pull-up makes you feel kind of like a different level athlete too. When you can master your body weight to that level, that's why a lot of people
and do it more than one set.
Exactly. Yeah. Which we've had some battles on those long, like, oh, you did 25. I'm going to try to do 20, whatever. And I think that people think it's like a really high mountain to climb when they're like, I can only do one, but we all started that way.
Bro, my first programming from my dad was 10 sets of one.
Yeah.
Because that's all I could do. And then like, it didn't go from 10 sets of one to 10 sets of two. I think it was like a week or two later. Like my first set was 2. My second set was 1.5. And then it was X amount of sets of 1 until I get to 10. I had to get 10 total. So yeah, you just got to grind it. And I get questions from people all the time. Like, how do I get better pull-ups? I'm like, well, how many days a week are you doing pull-ups? They'll say, oh, 1. I'm like, well, that's definitely not going to cut it.
Tyler for the carpet guy.
You know, you got to do weighted pull-ups. You need to do strict form pull-ups. And then you need a day where maybe it's not strict, but you're just trying to crank out those reps. I don't care if they're half reps. You're trying to just constantly get more.
Yeah, I think that what's the way that you would scale a beginner, D? Would you say, what if they can't do one? Is it heavy pull downs? Is it band assisted? Like, how do we help the people who are just getting rolling?
Yeah, no doubt. Now, if you got a partner, I like kind of the partner assisted under the ankles better than a band assisted because I think as a partner, as the coach, you can kind of gauge how much to help them.
Yeah.
And my thing is like, hey, if I'm trying to get someone to where they can do one on their own, then if they're doing a set of 5 with me helping them, then I'm only going to help them as much as they need it to get the reps.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So
what about the assisted thing? I mean, we don't have one at our gym, but
nah, we don't have one. I'm guessing it probably feels similar to a band. Or
so if somebody's at like a big gym, that would be a possible.
For sure, yeah.
But just don't be riding that mug.
No. Yeah, I guess just like anything else, you can't always just do the same thing and then expect to make that jump and get better. So if you're using the assisted pull-up machine and you're doing the same weight and rep scheme every week, and then you're wondering, wow, every time I try to do a pull-up, I can't do it. It's because you're not trying to progress.
Yeah.
So you got to keep constantly push every workout. And if you don't just get up on that bar every day and try, you're never going to get there.
Yeah, it's good. D, this is great talks, bro.
My brother.
So good. Where can they find you, D?
At Coach Myers _gut check.
Yeah, and I'm your boy at Corey G Fitness. Max Every Muscle. We appreciate y'all. We'll be back next week for a different body part. It's a lot of fun, D.
We might have to go lower body next week.
Yeah, I'm down with that. Hey, there's some old squat stories I got from. I remember back in the day. We can get after it at the original.
Oh, we can go from where we didn't do legs at all in high school to where we trained legs like such savages at the T3 days that like it was probably detrimental to our health.
Oh, I'm sure it's part of our back problems. All right, we'll see you guys next week. Later.
Peace.